What if, instead of Supreme Chancellor Palpatine executing Order 66, triggering the annihilation of the Jedi Order, the Jedi instead executed Order 65, declaring the Chancellor an enemy of the Republic? What would have happened, and how would things have changed for the galaxy? We'll jump right in, and the Clone Wars were at their peak as the Galactic Republic teetered on the edge of destruction. With separatist forces pressing their advantage, the Jedi Council found itself grappling with an uneasy feeling, one that Master Yoda himself could not ignore. Chancellor Palpatine, the man who had been granted emergency powers and nearly unlimited control, had become increasingly secretive. His influence over the Senate and the Grand Army of the Republic had grown to an alarming degree, and whispers of his overreach filled the halls of the Jedi Temple. There were suspicions that the Chancellor was in reality a Sith Lord, the one who had trained both Darth Maul and Darth Tyrannus. Kenobi had reported that Dooku told him a Sith Lord was in charge of the Republic, but the Jedi dismissed the notion, believing it to be a lie told to them to pull them apart. But the more the war went on, the more they suspected that Dooku had in fact told the truth all those years ago. Of course, they had no direct proof, but all signs were pointing towards Palpatine being the mystery man behind the curtain, and if it was him, well, that would mean that he had been pulling the strings of both sides of the war from the very start. It was Master Mace Windu who first presented an idea to the Council: execute Order 65. A little-known protocol within the Republic's military directives, Order 65 outlined the removal of the Supreme Chancellor should he be deemed unfit to lead. This order could only be executed with the approval of the Galactic Senate or the Jedi High Council, and it was an order that was only to be executed in the most dire of situations. Palpatine had it programmed into the clones so as not to arouse suspicion about the other darker orders that the troopers were programmed with. Given the overwhelming evidence of Palpatine's corruption, his refusal to relinquish emergency powers, his secret dealings with the Senate, and his unexplained knowledge of separatist movements, the Council made a fateful decision. They would move against him before it was too late. The stakes were incredibly high. If they were right, then they would have saved the galaxy from the rule of a Sith Lord. But if they were wrong, they would be seen as traitors, and no doubt banished from the Republic for their treachery. Still, with the war dragging on, something had to be done. Led by Mace Windu, a contingent of Jedi Masters, including Kit Fisto, Egen Kolar, and Saesee Tiin, entered the Chancellor's office in the dead of night. The plan was to peacefully arrest him, place former Chancellor Finis Valorum temporarily in charge, and then they could establish what had been going on behind the scenes of the war. The Senate Rotunda was eerily quiet, save for the flickering holoprojectors displaying battle updates from across the galaxy. Palpatine sat at his desk, his fingers steepled as if he had been expecting them. Palpatine spoke first, his voice dark yet with a tinge of amusement to it. He questioned whether the Jedi sought to overthrow the Republic. Mace didn't take the bait and simply replied with, "You are under arrest, Chancellor," stating that the Jedi High Council had deemed him a threat to the Republic. The wall of other Jedi behind Mace all nodded, staring intently at Palpatine, who still seemed relaxed, despite the ominous atmosphere in the room. Palpatine rose slowly, a sinister grin creeping across his face. He congratulated the Jedi on their resourcefulness in using Order 65 against him, seeming genuinely pleased, but he did question whether the Jedi thought that the Grand Army of the Republic would follow them. Up until that point, the Jedi had just been advisors and generals on the battlefield. They had fought alongside the clones, but they had also been just as disposable as the clones. So would the army see them as leaders when the time came? Kit Fisto stepped forward, hand on lightsaber hilt, saying that they would just have to roll the dice and see. Palpatine chuckled warmly and nodded before exploding into motion. A crimson lightsaber ignited from his sleeve as he lunged forward, striking down Egen Kolar and Saesee Tiin in an instant. The two Jedi, both master swordsmen, had not been prepared for the speed and ferocity of Palpatine. Kit Fisto barely parried the Chancellor's vicious attack before he too was cut down, falling to the floor with his comrades. Windu held firm, his purple blade clashing violently with the Sith Lord's strikes. The battle was fierce, but unlike in another timeline, the Jedi were prepared. Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi arrived just in time, providing backup and reinforcing Windu. Outnumbered and momentarily overwhelmed, Palpatine leaped backwards, summoning a surge of Force lightning to blast his attackers away. Windu deflected the energy with his lightsaber and, with a swift counterattack, severed Palpatine's weapon hand. The Sith Lord fell to his knees, snarling in rage. Kenobi and Yoda surrounded him, blocking his exit, while Ki-Adi-Mundi, several other council members, and a squad of Jedi Temple guards strode into the room and ignited their own weapons. There was no escape for Palpatine. Mace Windu declared that it was over, saying that the Jedi would ensure the Republic survived without him. With Palpatine arrested, the Jedi moved quickly to inform the Senate. However, the Sith Lord's contingency plans had already been set into motion. Clone commanders, confused by the conflicting orders between Order 65 and their loyalty to Palpatine, found themselves divided. Some, like Commander Rex and Captain Hauser, hesitated, refusing to turn on the Jedi without concrete proof of their betrayal. Others, such as Commander Cody, still believed in Palpatine's leadership and attempted to suppress the Jedi's actions. Without the execution of Order 66, the clones were divided. The Senate was also thrown into chaos. Senators loyal to Palpatine, including Masa Maeda and Sly Moore, decried the Jedi's actions as a coup. However, Bail Organa, Padme Amidala, and Mon Mothma rallied enough support to hold an emergency session. After hearing testimony from Anakin Skywalker, who, without Palpatine's manipulation, had not yet fallen to the dark side, the Senate voted to uphold Order 65. Valorum was sworn into office, due to him having spent many years as Chancellor prior to Palpatine. He would provide a familiar, friendly face to help calm the Senate. But as for Palpatine, well, he was officially stripped of his position and designated an enemy of the Republic. But he would not go quietly. Palpatine had been contained in the Republic prison until the Jedi could organize a fleet to take him to the Citadel. But the Republic prison wasn't a facility designed to keep Force users captive like the Citadel was. However, many Jedi and Temple guards remained there to make sure that nothing went wrong. They knew how powerful and dangerous Palpatine was, and they wanted to be sure there were no mistakes. But of course, Palpatine is an enemy that should never be underestimated. Using the Force, Palpatine shattered his restraints and unleashed a violent storm of dark energy, sending shockwaves through Republic prison. The room descended into panic as Jedi and Senate guards struggled to contain him. Immediately, the Council were alerted and a contingent were sent to help deal with the situation. Ki-Adi-Mundi, Komin Kaj, and Plo Koon led the efforts to regain calm and get Palpatine back in custody. They and a handful of other masters battled Palpatine, who had gotten his hands on the green lightsaber of a fallen Jedi. They struggled to keep him within the facility, and they worried if he escaped from the building, he would flee to his current apprentice, Count Dooku. But as both Ki-Adi-Mundi and Plo Koon fell to Palpatine's blade, which was now starting to turn crimson due to the sheer hate and malice being poured through it, something happened which Palpatine did not expect. Anakin walked into the building, lightsaber ready. Palpatine had spent a decade sinking his claws into Skywalker, grooming him and preparing him to be turned to the dark side. Had the Jedi not arrested him, Palpatine would have soon made his final move, taking Anakin as his apprentice. But with the young Jedi seeing the hate and destruction the Chancellor was causing, he remained committed to the Jedi. Palpatine sensed that his opportunity to take the Chosen One as his own Sith apprentice had slipped away, and furious, he lunged at Anakin, who was backed up by Obi-Wan and Yoda. But Anakin was ready. Palpatine was good, and Palpatine was fast, but Anakin was better and quicker. He dodged the red blade, and it connected with Kenobi's blue weapon, while Anakin reversed his grip on his blade, plunging it into Palpatine's back. It was over. As Palpatine fell, his scream echoed through the Force, sending a tremor that reached even the most distant Sith acolytes across the galaxy. This beacon of darkness and terror had been vanquished. With Palpatine dead, the Republic found itself at a crossroads. The war with the Separatists was still ongoing, but with Dooku and Grievous leaderless, the Confederacy's forces soon collapsed. The two CIS leaders were eventually killed in a last stand over Dooku's homeworld of Sereno. The clones remained divided, though the Palpatine loyalists came to accept the former Chancellor as an evil Sith Lord when indisputable evidence of his dealing were revealed. Chancellor Valorum happily stepped aside once more as Senator Mon Mothma was voted into the position of leader of the Republic. She would help mend the divided galaxy. Anakin, shaken by his near descent into the dark side, reaffirmed his commitment to the Jedi Order and was eventually named a Jedi Master. He opened up about everything, from the way that Palpatine had used him over the years to his relationship with Padme. The Council, though still slightly disapproving, accepted his relationship, and eventual children, though they still expected him to prioritize his role as a Jedi Council member, something which Anakin sometimes did and sometimes didn't. But overall, the execution of Order 65 would ensure that the galaxy would never be the same. The Sith's hold had been broken, Palpatine had been killed, the war had been won, and the Republic, though battered and scarred, had a chance to rebuild, this time free from the shadow of the dark side.